Hello, hello. You are listening to Trevor and Sean's podcast. Still no name on it, so I guess we have to call it a podcast to be named later. Trevor Mader and Sean Nino with you here as we are every week. We've got some things on the docket today, and it looks like this. Northwest men's basketball, some big news for them. They're going to be hosting a regional later on in the week. Then we're going to dive into the NFL Scouting Combine that came to a close today. We'll talk into who impressed and who disappointed, and then it's March, so that means madness, March Madness, right around the corner. We're going to preview some conference tournaments and give our wonderful insight. So keep it locked right here on Trevor and Sean's podcast to be named later. Back here on a podcast to be named later, Trevor Mader, Sean Nino joining you here. Sean, in Northwestern State Bearcat basketball, MIAA champs, back-to-back. Has a good ring to it, doesn't it?
Everything has a good ring to it if you're a Bearcat fan right now. Just going off of the MIAA tournament, the team, they didn't really have anything to play for other than pride, because at this point they could have lost on Thursday and still probably been the one seed in the region. But this team really came out and played not quite their best, but they did enough to go out and win. Yesterday was the only day that they really showed what they were made of, kind of. They came out, probably played their best game of the tournament. They were up by 20 at one point in the second half against Central Missouri, and then they just kind of put it into relax mode, kind of just coasting to the end, and ended up winning by 8. So,
and if you've been living under a rock since Thursday, they played on Thursday night against Lincoln. They won that one 80-76. They were led by 30 points from Justin Pitts. Chrissy Buendow had 14. They held Anthony Verdure, who we had talked about last week as being a game changer. He had scored 50 earlier on in the year when these two met. Held them to just 16 points, so they were able to advance on there. And then that's when things got a little dicey Saturday, Sean. I know you were there when Northwest was able to knock off Missouri Southern 67-63. They were down in the closing seconds, had to get a three from Zach Schneider with about 3 seconds to go, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it was like 2.5 seconds, 3 seconds. I mean, at that point, time's not really important. It's,
Yeah, and they were able to get it done. It was a lot closer than I think most people would have preferred it be. You were down there at that game. What did you see in that game that stuck out to you?
The Bearcats' offense honestly didn't have a lot of flow to it that day. Justin Pitts was kind of running the show like he normally does, but guys just didn't seem to get open, and that may be a testament to how well Missouri Southern was actually playing defense. Because these teams played 2 times during the regular season. Once you get to that third time, you kind of know what a team does, and at that point, it's just which team plays better that day. And coming down to it, the Bearcats were down by 2 with 30 seconds left. The Bearcats took a shot. The ball was rebounded, took a timeout. It basically happened again. They took another timeout. So they had no timeouts left in the game. Missouri Southern had 1. And, favor just kind of went our way. Justin Pitts drove in, threw it out to Zach Schneider, who took the first and last shots of the game. And, it's really all that mattered for him, because, it was kind of weird because it was, you hadn't seen much of Zach. The team, again, really didn't have flow, but, he hit the one shot that truly mattered.
And you can make the argument, too, that Schneider's 3 probably could have been an and 1, too. I mean, there was, a good chunk of contact there from at least what I saw, but he was able to get it done. Zach Schneider had just 6 points in that game, and to me, that could spell trouble if we get to go in here in the regionals and you can't get your difference maker from beyond the arc going. But in that game, the Bearcats were led by 24 points from Justin Pitts, 14 from Devontae Mosby, and 12 from Chris Buendow. Missouri Southern, though, they had a good combination going. C.J. Carr and J.J. Kratit, they both scored 21 points apiece, and Bearcats able to avenge their 17-point loss they had earlier on in the season. And after that one, that was a tough one skating by. Then they get to UCM yesterday and able to pick up the win in that one, 69-61.
Yeah, this team, they kind of can get it from everywhere, but 3 Bearcats were on the all-tournament team. Devontae Mosby, Chris Buendow, and then Justin Pitts was named the man of the tournament, player of the tournament, or the most outstanding player, whichever way
for
they
the second consecutive year, too. So, I mean, that's impressive, and he's only a junior. So, I mean, there's probably one more under his belt. Like you said, that game to me, it wasn't as close of a game as maybe the score indicated. It was 40-28 at halftime, and they kind of got on coast mode.
Mm-hmm.
And UCM was able to reel themselves back in it. And Justin Pitts had a good game, 26 points, the only scorer in double digits. Brett Doherty had 9. Ryan Welty had 9. 8 from Anthony Wood, 7 apiece from Zach Schneider and Chrissy Boo and Dow. Schneider had a couple of threes and a free throw. So they had one great performance yesterday from Pitts, and then everyone else did their job well enough to win. And you look, Central Missouri actually shot pretty well, 47.5%. I mean, that's not great, but that's not.
No, the Bearcats shot 46%, but the outlying stat for that is, I don't know the actual final numbers, but at one point the Bearcats had 20 more shots than the Mules.
Northwest was 27 of 58, and Central Missouri was 19 of 40.
Yeah, so they took 18 more shots, and they made about the same percentage of them, and that kind of shows in the score. I mean, it was a lot more apparent when they were up by 20 in the second half, but they, again, as we talked about, they just kind of went into coast mode.
Yeah, I mean, I think once the lead kind of got to a decent amount, then it did kind of get in coast mode, and UCM did kind of get back in it, but Northwest able to hold them off. And then, Sean, the big news last night, they released the regional pairings at 9:30 at night. I don't know if the NCAA is thinking releasing.
Maybe it has to do with tournaments out on the West Coast.
Maybe.
Because, I mean, you have to take all of them into,
Yeah, I mean.
You have to care about every team. You can't just be like, oh, hey,
why not just do it Monday morning then? I mean,
that's true.
Why do it at 9:30 on Sunday night?
Because we're not like Division I, so we can't have a 3-hour special on ESPN.
True, with Charles Barkley and all of them blabbing away. That's not the point. You look at Northwest region, they're the 1 seed, so they will host the region this week, and I believe is it Thursday?
Saturday,
Sunday, Tuesday.
Yeah.
It's a weird format. In that, the 1 seed is Northwest Missouri State. Southwest Minnesota State is the 2 seed. East Central is the 3 seed. Arkansas Monticello is the 4. Augustana is the 5. Minnesota State Moorhead is the 6. Arkansas Tech is the 7. And Upper Iowa is the 8 seed. So they will get Northwest Missouri State in the first round on Saturday night.
At 6 o'clock.
At 6 o'clock.
And these two teams have played before. Northwest beat Upper Iowa by 30.
It was 87-52, and Pitts had, I want to say, 30 points in that game.
Yeah, that's 35 points, and that's without one of Northwest's better player and Chris Buendow, who started out the year with an illness. So, I mean, I honestly don't see this game going any other way than Northwest's way. Again, I haven't watched Upper Iowa. It's Division II basketball. Like, let's be honest here. You don't watch unless you're a certain individual. We know you don't generally watch outside of your team.
I know. Being from Iowa, I know a little bit about Upper Iowa. I mean, they're in Upper Iowa. They're actually, I believe, in a town called Fayette, up in the northeast part of the state. Their mascot is the Peacocks, and it is a very, very small, I believe it's a private school that is really well known for their agronomy program. Outside of that, I couldn't tell you anything about their athletics or anything. But, yeah, so that'll be who the Bearcats will get in the first round on Saturday at 6 p.m. Then, assuming they win that one, they'll get the winner of Arkansas, Monticello, and Augustana. Now, think about that one, Sean. They kicked off the season in Bearcat Arena with Augustana. Wouldn't it be awesome to end Augie's season right there where it started?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, I don't think the Bearcats honestly care who they play. They just want to play well and continue on to Tuesday at this point. Because, I mean, yeah, that'd be cool. Augustana's not having as good of a season as they did last year. They also had, I think, 4 seniors leave. So, you can't expect a team that wins a national title that then loses a majority of their team to be able to come right back and be able to be just at that level again.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see if they do get there, whether they get Arkansas Monticello or Augustana, and then from there, Southwest Minnesota State will face Arkansas State on Saturday, or Arkansas Tech, on Saturday, and East Central will get Minnesota State Moorhead. Other 1 seeds that are hosting regionals in Division II: Fairmont State, Alabama Huntsville, and if I look at it correctly, Queens of North Carolina. Now, I was looking earlier at the Division II basketball rankings, and I could have swore it had Hawaii Pacific ranked up in Division II, but I do not see them in the
I think they're like a 3 seed somewhere,
Yeah, I mean,
maybe a 2 seed.
wouldn't you love to take a trip to Hawaii? Why couldn't we just give them the regional? I mean,
Well,
I'm sure that they would. I'm not seeing them on here. Wouldn't that be cool though to make a trip to Hawaii for a basketball regional? I think it'd be.
normally, yes, but at this point, like, you're just going there for business. And so, yeah, it'd be cool to go out there, but at that point, like, jet lag is going to come in. So just playing on your home court, being able to sleep in your own bed is going to mean something to these guys. And for it being the first time the Northwest has ever host a regional championship, that'll, I think these guys are going to be fully prepped. We have the media luncheon tomorrow, and so it'll be different seeing them in this way because for every year in their time here, they've always had to go pretty much to Augustana for the regional. So
It is also worth noting that Northwest is the only MIAA team to qualify for the tournament, or I don't know that it has an official slogan for it, because you can't call it March Madness, can you?
well, I mean, it's March and it could be madness.
Yeah, it could be. So now, I know they used to. Do they still have the Division II game on like CBS? I know they used to.
I honestly don't know because Northwest wasn't in it last year. I'm not going to lie to you. I didn't watch the national title game because I didn't care. So,
Yeah, I mean, I thought at one time CBS had, maybe it was Division II or Division III. I don't remember which one, but it had one of them on there, and that is in Sioux Falls, if I remember correctly. Is it the Sanford Center?
I
believe it's at the Sanford Center, which is the same place where they host the Summit League Championship, where there's some schools from around this area, such as University of Nebraska Omaha, that plays up there. And that is actually kind of a neat setup up there in that arena. There's a hotel connected to the arena where all the teams stay. So it'll definitely be interesting if they can make it that far, but you got to get out of Maryville first and then onto there. I mean, I guess we'll see. If you look at this team, what do you think is the one weakness of this team that could potentially hold them back going forward?
Probably, again, like the flow of offense. Sometimes they just look stagnant, like they can't really get the ball going. Guys kind of standing around. The defense is really good. 3-pointers are normally there. I could see them having an off night, but then we've seen that during this season. They've been able to bounce back and just been able to drive it inside and get some shots. Maybe not the 10 threes that they could make. They'll get like 3 and it'll be all fine.
I think your bigs have to be effective. I think it's obvious. It's a no-brainer that Pitts is probably going to be on. I think Schneider will find his rhythm again. He's a senior. He doesn't know when his last game in a Bearcat jersey is going to be. It could be this Saturday. It could be a couple weeks from now in Sioux Falls. It's tough to say, so I think he'll be just fine. But to me, you got to get guys like Mosby and Dow going and make sure that Mosby's been playing really well and Dow's been playing pretty well. Keep them going. Keep them loose. Keep them doing their thing. Brett Doherty getting some buckets. I know you said something about his shot looked like maybe it was a little bit off Saturday. Maybe you can fine-tune that just a little bit. But hopefully they can get it done. I mean, this has been a really, really fun team to watch.
Yeah. This team's been great to watch, and it's going to be pretty cool to see where they go from here because, they've been to the regional championship the past 2 years, and they've lost to Augustana both times by a total of 3 points. So it'll be really interesting to see what this team, what emotions they feel, if you can use that word, because, they really haven't been here, but they have, So, I expect this team to be fine-tuned, focused in, and I guess, it all comes down to game time next Saturday.
Absolutely. Next Saturday at 6 p.m. in Bearcat Arena, and then if they win, they play Sunday evening. Am I correct?
Yes.
Sunday at 7, and then the regional final would be Tuesday at 7. I know that one for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But session tickets are $5 a session for students, so make sure you get your tickets and get there and be loud and proud. I know I myself am going to try to get to at least one of the regional games, if not multiple of them, so should be exciting. I mean, we've never seen this before, so it'll be interesting to see it.
Yeah, and I guess just one more thing for people who are not students. Tickets are $12 for adults. Children 2 and under are free, and if you want to pick up your ticket, it will be open an hour and 15 minutes prior to the start of the session, not the game. So,
How packed do you think Bearcat Arena is going to be?
when it comes to the Bearcat games, I think it'll be full. For the other games, I'm not quite sure because it's never been here, and we have a generally small gym. It's not, it gets loud in there, but there's not a lot of people that can fit in there. So, I expect Bearcat Nation to come out in full and, support all these guys.
Absolutely. It should be fun this weekend as Northwest Missouri State hosts the regional Upper Iowa in town, the Peacocks, on Saturday at 6 p.m. So make sure to check that one out. It'll also be streamed on KNWT Channel 8, if I'm correct, and you can always listen to it on the Bearcat Radio Network. So make sure to check it out. It's going to be fun. But, Sean, we'll move into our next segment here in a moment. Are you ready to talk some NFL Combine? I'm sure you've watched the whole thing from start to finish, right?
I've seen highlights. It gets hard to watch guys do the same drill over and over again, not going to lie.
That's all you need to know. We'll be right back here with Trevor and Sean on a podcast to be named later. Welcome back here on a podcast to be named later. Trevor Mater, Sean Nino. Last segment we talked about some Northwest basketball. Now we're going to get to Sean's favorite thing, the NFL Draft and the NFL Combine. Sean, the NFL Combine, it's always an interesting event. I mean, it's difficult to tell whether or not results from that translate over into the pro game. But I have a curious question for you. Well, what do you think your 40 time would be? Are we talking somewhere around the John Ross, Chris Johnson range?
I mean, that's like my half of 40 time probably at this point.
It depends what kind of 40 we're talking. But, yeah.
40 yards, 40 feet.
Yeah, but 40 liters. I mean, I guess it all depends. 40 ounces. My 40 time on that could probably be decent. But, yeah, I mean, there was some guys that I think probably made themselves a lot more money this week after the Combine. And the Combine, it's always kind of weird because you never can tell what you're going to get out of a player just off the Combine. I mean, you don't know because they're not out there with the pads and the helmet on and, putting their hand in the dirt or getting under center. They're just out there doing vertical jumps and running 40-yard dashes and trying to see how much they can bench press. So, I don't know. I guess we'll see.
Yeah, one of my favorite things is to see the offensive lineman 40-yard dash. Not because, they're slow or anything like that, but because it actually serves no purpose.
No. Same with, kickers and punters. I don't know if they make run 40-yard dash. They should just for entertainment, but... yeah, it serves no purpose whatsoever, and a lot of that stuff doesn't either. Even Christian McCaffrey only being able to bench 225 pounds 10 times, it really doesn't matter that much. I mean, because that's not McCaffrey's style. McCaffrey's, not a bruising back that's going to probably carry guys on his back into the end zone. Now, Leonard Fournette, yeah, that might be a little bit more of a problem. They didn't have that problem with Leonard Fournette at all, so... yeah, the Combine is very interesting, and it's difficult to tell how that's going to transition over because you look at a guy like Eric Fisher. I mean, that's a guy that was probably a middle first-round draft pick before the Combine, and then he blew the doors off everyone at the Senior Bowl and the Combine, and all of a sudden he's the number one draft pick. And granted, that was a very weak draft class, but without the Combine, Eric Fisher probably isn't in Kansas City right now.
No, and even going back to Dontari Poe, he was kind of a guy that people were like, okay, he didn't fully do as well as he should during his senior year, but then he went to the Combine and did extraordinarily well. I think he ran a 4.98 at 315 pounds. You're like, oh goodness, he can still move even though, he's still a big guy. And so, the Combine, you can look at the numbers. They don't automatically mean that you're going to be a great player, but a player like John Ross, who broke the Combine record for 40-yard dash, that's going to get headlines, but it's also not really going to matter until he steps out on the field and shows what he can do.
Well, exactly to my next point, John Ross of Washington, the wide receiver, ran a 4.22 40-yard dash. That is a record for the Combine, previously set by Chris Johnson back in 2008. But I mean, the speed doesn't really matter if he can't catch the ball or if he can't take hits. Look at Darius Hayward-Bay. Going back a couple years ago, I mean, that's a guy that ran I don't remember what his 40 time was, but it was 4.3, something like that, incredibly fast. Couldn't catch the ball to save his life, and that's always been his problem in the NFL is his inconsistency with being able to catch the football. So, interesting to see whether or not that transitions over. I think Ross originally, I kind of had him as a middle first round, a late first round pick, and there's a chance now. I personally wouldn't, but I wouldn't be surprised if a team is more apt to take him over a guy like Mike Williams. I mean, it's just how the NFL works that you could see someone jump ahead and go, you know what? I want the speed guy more than a freakish guy like Mike Williams. Mike Williams, to me, kind of reminds me of like a Calvin Johnson or an Odell Beckham, where he's a big guy that can go up and get the catch. John Ross, and I can't really think of a good comparison off the top of my head, but he's more of your speedster guy. Mm-hmm. Maybe more like Antonio Brown or someone like that. They're that's gonna get by you with their speed. They're not necessarily the biggest guy, but they can make the play. Ross only 5'11", 188 pounds, so definitely not as big compared to Mike Williams. Mike Williams, I believe, is 6'3", 6'4", something in that range, and just an incredible playmaker for Clemson, as Williams is 6'4", 218 pounds. So, 32.5-inch vertical jump. That's about 27.5 inches higher than mine would be. What about you?
Yeah, just maybe like 29 higher than me. But either way, it's still impressive. Vertical jump's cool. But again, it doesn't mean a lot. All of these numbers are kind of just put out there. And, to the average fan, you're like, oh, cool, he can run fast, he can jump high. That's what they're supposed to do type of thing. Like, you guys are going to get paid money to just, go and do that anyway. So this event's kind of glorified. It's not, it's still cool to see, but, I think teams have a lot of their minds made up on, like, which guys are good and which ones aren't, because they've been doing that for the entire year.
You look at some of the vertical jump leaders. I just found this interesting. Obi Malifnawu from UConn, he's a safety projected to go late first, early second round, had a 44-inch vertical. That's a great name for a wide receiver. Speedy Noyle of Texas A&M had a 43.5-inch vertical. Marcus Williams, a free safety from Utah, had a 43.5-inch vertical. Robert Davis, the wide receiver from Georgia State, had a 41-inch vertical. And Myles Garrett of Texas A&M had a 41-inch vertical. Garrett's a guy that really tested really, really well at the combine. He ran a 4.6 40. Bench press 33 times. This is a guy that's 6'4", 272 pounds, already projected as a number one draft pick. And I don't know about you, Sean, but I just don't really see a scenario where he isn't the number one draft pick, barring, something like what happened to Laramie Tunsil last year, or, an injury that pops up out of the blue, and you hope none of that happens. To me, the Browns would almost be crazy to not draft Myles Garrett.
Yeah, he reminds me a lot of Jadeveon Clowney. And, Clowney came out and had the injuries. That's, like, pretty much the only reason that he's been bad. I mean, he's not bad, but he just hasn't quite lived up to potential so far. And, he's going to the Browns, so honestly, like, what are you going to expect out of him? I mean, if he's the only person on that defense, how good is he going to be able to produce? But, there's a lot of names that have been thrown around for the number one pick. Last week, I think it was Mitchell Trubisky. By the way, he added the ELL, so he was just adding L's to get ready to go to the Browns, I guess. I don't know.
What's up with the Mitchell all of a sudden? I don't remember what I was watching yesterday, but they said Mitch Trubisky, and they had to, like, correct themselves, basically. I don't understand. Is that something he's just now requested, or... Maybe
his name is Mitchell, and that was like a nickname.
Well, I'm sure it is.
You never know. People name their kids anything these days, so maybe his name's Mitchell, and he's like, okay, I don't really want that. You guys can just call me Mitch. And then, as he gets older, he's like, you know what? I think I'm going to go back to my more sophisticated name, Mitchell.
Yeah, that's a lot more sophisticated, and it threw me off for a minute, too. But you look at Texas A&M, you have Myles Garrett. He's been tossed around as the number one pick. Mitch Trubisky. Deshaun Watson earlier on in the process, his status has kind of cooled off. Jonathan Allen from Alabama has been thrown around up there, so definitely a lot of names to look for up there. You look at some of the mock drafts on NFL.com, Cleveland at number 1, it's almost everyone thinks Myles Garrett. And I agree totally. I think Garrett's got so much upside. He kind of reminds me of like a Jadeveon Clowney, Khalil Mack type player. I mean, the one question with Garrett, kind of like what they had with Clowney, is his motor. And you look at his production in games against teams like Alabama and Georgia and Florida, it wasn't quite as good as what it was against smaller schools. I read a stat this morning that 16 of his 32 sacks came against 6 or 7 non-Power 5 opponents like University of Texas San Antonio and so on. So, but I think you can still tell whether a guy can play or not. And his combine-wise, they were comparing him to Khalil Mack and Jadeveon Clowney and stuff just off his combine testing. So he definitely passed that part of the test. What about San Francisco at 2? I mean, what do you do there if you're the 49ers?
Well, they're basically in this whole experimental phase of getting a new GM, new coach. They don't have a quarterback right now because someone opted out of a contract. And so, I could see them taking a quarterback, but they also just don't have a good roster whatsoever. So, it's really hard to pinpoint a thing that they need when it's pretty much just get a better team at this point.
From what it sounded like, John Lynch, the general manager this week, spoke at the Combine. He spoke very highly of one particular quarterback, that being Deshaun Kaiser of Notre Dame. So I don't know if you take Kaiser at 2 or not. I think that's almost too high for any of these quarterbacks. So, I would say at 2. You look at it, NFL.com, you have Bucky Brooks, Daniel Jeremiah, Lance Zierlein, and Charles Casserly. They all go different ways. Malik Hooker, the safety from Ohio State. Marshawn Lattimore, the corner from Ohio State. Mitchell Trubisky from North Carolina. Or Jonathan Allen from Alabama. I think I would probably go Malik Hooker. You can get, a great athlete back there. He's kind of a ball hawk. People have compared him and Jamal Adams both to Ed Reed. So I would probably pass on a quarterback there because I still think there's a trade for Jimmy Garoppolo somewhere down the future. And I don't know who gets it, but I think, Kyle Shanahan could work wonders with a quarterback like Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess we'll see. You look on Chicago at number 3. Sean, that's another team that's in a dumpster fire right now. I mean, who knows what's going to happen with Jay Cutler. And if you're the Bears, you almost can't bring Jay Cutler back, can you?
No. They got rid of Alshon Jeffrey as well. So really the only offensive firepower they have right now is Jordan Howard, who was probably the third best rookie running back, second best.
I'd probably say second, unless I'm forgetting someone. Obviously,
yeah, that's kind of where I am right now too. I was just trying to go through, who are the guys that were in last year's draft. But yeah, he kind of surprised people as well out of last year. But then he, once he got into his spot, he did well. But again, he's on the Bears, so he's not going to be able to truly shine when you like they can't do things well.
I look for the Bears to probably, they've been heavily linked to Mike Glennon. This is a team with John Fox as head coach that is coaching on thin ice right now. I mean, he probably doesn't have a year to waste on a rookie quarterback. So do you want to draft a guy like Mitch Trubisky who's probably not going to be ready? And then who knows what happens from there? Or do you throw it into a guy that really doesn't have a lot more experience than Mike Glennon, but he sounds like he's going to get paid really well, almost like Brock Osweiler money. Which,
so saying Brock Osweiler money, if you just threw the actual number of money, you'd be like, okay, but then you're like, that Brock Osweiler money, oh goodness. When you put that tag on it, it's like, oh, he's gonna be a bust, isn't he? And that's kind of how I feel because I've seen him play before. He's not anything spectacular. He's a backup quarterback.
And I read a mock draft earlier this week that actually had the Texans taking a quarterback in the first round. They had him taking Patrick Mahomes of Texas Tech. And, I guess we kind of transition over to now the quarterbacks, Sean. You look at some of the quarterbacks in the draft class. Every year it seems like the start of the season or start of the preseason, everyone talks about how loaded a quarterback class is. And then as the season goes on, it really isn't that loaded. I mean, is there a single quarterback in this draft right now that you'd be confident turning the keys over to on day one?
No.
Yeah.
It's pretty much as simple as that. I mean, I like Deshaun Watson, but I think he still needs to sit behind a competent quarterback to learn that system for a year. And I mean, I know some of these guys aren't going to get that chance to do that. You know, some of the guys are going to get drafted and be like, okay, go and lead our team to the promised land, which isn't fair to them. But I mean, what is fair in the NFL at this point?
You know, and that's what I like to call Sam Bradford syndrome or David Carr syndrome. I mean, a lot of people were really tough on Jared Goff for not being ready right away, but at the same time, don't throw him in there if he's not ready. I mean, that's how you can kill a quarterback's confidence, or, you know, you can create injury problems that you never get back. I always thought the problem with Sam Bradford wasn't that he's a bad quarterback. I think Sam Bradford's a serviceable quarterback, but he was in a team in St. Louis that had nothing around him. And, I mean, the coach was always coaching on what probably felt like a one-game contract. I mean, he didn't have the weapons around him. He had a great defense for a while, but no offensive line and no running back until Todd Gurley got there. By that time, they had traded him, so he just never could do anything with it, and you don't want to do that to a quarterback. You look at the top 10 ranked quarterbacks by CBSSports.com. They have Mitch Trubisky ranked number 1 in the quarterbacks. Deshaun Kaiser of Notre Dame is second. Deshaun Watson of Clemson is third. Patrick Mahomes from Texas Tech is their 4th-ranked quarterback. Brad Kaya of Miami 5th. Nathan Peterman of Pitt 6th. Davis Webb of California is ranked 7th. Gerard Evans, this is how you know it's a weak draft class. Gerard Evans of Virginia Tech is ranked 8th. Evans played at junior college for 1 year, started at Virginia Tech for 1 year. Now he's in the NFL draft. He probably should have stayed in school, and he didn't. Chad Kelly of Ole Miss is 9th. And Kelly's a guy that, going into the preseason, a lot of people thought he could maybe be the number 1 overall pick. He just didn't have it this year at all.
No, he also got hurt halfway through the year, so that also plays into it.
Yeah, I mean, he just, and he's had some problems in the past, too. You look, the 10th-ranked quarterback was Josh Dobbs of Tennessee. Some other ones of note, Iowa's C.J. Beathard. Colorado's Sifo Lufau is up there as well, and then Bart Houston from Wisconsin, Cooper Rush from Central Michigan, Mitch Leidner from Minnesota. So most of those guys probably will never be more than, a career backup. But you look at this top half of the draft class, you look at, from 4 through 8 or so. Is there a guy in there that you think could probably be a serviceable quarterback in the NFL? Not named Kaiser, Watson, or Trubisky?
It's really hard. I mean, Mahomes, I've heard some pretty good things about. I think, again, if you put him behind someone, he's going to have to learn the system because he played at Texas Tech, and that's not a very pro-style offense. So, I mean, it's really hard to judge if these guys are going to be able to go start in the NFL because, again, most of these guys don't play in a pro system, and if they do, okay, those guys are going to be generally okay to put out there day one, but then they're still not going to know your offense.
Yeah, there is one guy in that top 5 or so that I look at that did play in a pro-style offense, and that is Brad Kaya from the University of Miami. So, but the problem with Kaya is there were times where I think he kind of disappointed some people this year. He made some mistakes, but he didn't play awful. I mean, 27 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, super 3,500 yards. So I think he's also still a project. I mean, I wouldn't want to throw Brad Kaya in there in week 1 and hand him the keys to the Cleveland Browns or whatever. Or no one probably wants the keys to those anyways. But I think Kaya could be serviceable. I mean, he's kind of got the NFL mold, it looks like. He's 6'4", 215 pounds. He can make plays outside of the pocket. Not his go-to. Does take a lot of sacks, though, as well. And he's familiar with the terminology. So that's a plus. I mean, you don't have to spend that extra time getting the terminology down. It's just getting the mechanics down. And he did make some mistakes this year, so that's one that I would look at and say, stands a chance. Patrick Mahomes, it's so tough with him because you look at the history of Texas Tech and their quarterbacks. That's not very promising at all, but a lot of what people say about him is he's not just a spread offense quarterback. He's a playmaker. He's a gunslinger. He can make the NFL throws. So I think in the right system, if you give him a year or two, I think he could be serviceable. But then again, we all thought the same thing about Bryce Petty, and it didn't turn out that way. You're looking at the top 3, Kaiser, Watson, Trubisky. If you looked at any one of those 3 and you had to pick a quarterback to start week 1, which one of those would you pick?
Uh, I mean, I guess Watson, but that's just because he's played the most out of them. Because Trubisky's only played this year. That's why people have kind of shied away from him. Deshaun Watson has led Clemson to back-to-back national championship games, and then they won this year's. So, I think he's kind of ready for that moment. He may not be, the best quarterback, but I think he'd be the best to put out there day one.
Yeah, I'm torn between Watson and Deshaun Kaiser. I mean, Kaiser, when he came in as a redshirt freshman last year, looked really good. I mean, he made a lot of really, really good plays. And this year he regressed a little bit, but I mean, that whole Notre Dame team was just a mess. And I think Kaiser has the right tangibles. He kind of reminds me of like a Russell Wilson type player if he can stay healthy and whatnot. So I would say one of those two would be who I would go for if it was me, but that's also why I'm not making these decisions. You look, though, at the NFL mock drafts on NFL.com in particular, quarterbacks really, I mean, most of them don't have the first quarterback going until number 10 to Buffalo. You have Lance Zierlein and Daniel Jeremiah taking Deshaun Watson, and then Charlie Casserly with Mitch Trubisky. And that's a program that has a serviceable quarterback in Tyrod Taylor, at least for the time being.
Yeah, they do. I mean, it's hard to find a quarterback because you're banking on a guy who's just coming right out of college. And, you're basically putting your future in, like, this one guy at that point. Like, if the Bills say goodbye to Tyrod, then they're going to have to start him this year, which I don't think is good for any of these quarterbacks.
Unless you send a guy like Mike Glennon for Brock Osweiler money. And I mean, you look at the 2018 quarterback draft class, and there are a lot of people that really feel like that draft class has the potential to be, quote-unquote, loaded. I mean, Sam Darnold from USC, Lamar Jackson from Louisville has the opportunity to come out, Baker Mayfield from Oklahoma, Luke Falk from Washington State, and there's Austin, or the Allen kid from Wyoming. So I mean, there's a handful of them, but it's just difficult with a rookie quarterback. I don't know what you do there really for sure.
I mean, just even looking back at this past NFL year, Carson Wentz started off the season so well, and I mean, it didn't end great for him. Jared Goff, who came in and really didn't look good, but again, he's playing on the Rams, so how much flack can you actually give him? Because, I mean, there are guys that could just go to bad teams and not get a chance to properly develop, and then your career's basically over.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting. One thing I find interesting in a lot of mock drafts is there's one team that they have taken a quarterback that it makes sense, but to the average football fan, it probably wouldn't. You want to take a guess what team that is?
The Patriots.
The Giants. They have Deshaun Watson or Mitch Trubisky going 23rd to the Giants, which, I mean, think about it, Eli Manning's going to be 36 by the time the season gets started. Here's a guy that stayed healthy because he's played from the head up. But, you almost take the Aaron Rodgers approach to it of, if draft a kid, develop him for a year or two. I mean, who better to learn under than Eli Manning? So.
Well, I mean, Eli's kind of notorious for making some pretty boneheaded plays, but I'm sure he could teach one of those two guys to
not make bonehead. But what Eli also has that we don't?
Rings.
2 Super Bowl rings, and the only guy to beat Tom Brady in 2 Super Bowls. Real quick here, if you were John Dorsey and the Chiefs and any one of these 3 quarterbacks falls to you at 27, Kaiser, Watson, Trubisky, we'll even throw in Mahomes because who knows what his status will be like. Which one of those guys would you take?
I would take Deshaun Watson because I think he fits the system better than the rest of the guys. I've seen comparisons to Donovan McNabb, and with Andy Reid, that just really makes sense. And,
which one of these guys would you shy away from the most?
Probably Trubisky, just because he hasn't played as much. That's not saying that this guy can't go out there and lead a team to a Super Bowl in the future. Just right now, from what we've seen, I don't think he has what it takes, or that he's the worst of the 4.
My thing is, I would probably take Watson or Kaiser. Kaiser's kind of a versatile quarterback, kind of like a Russell Wilson or something, who the Eagles originally wanted to take when Andy Reid was in Philadelphia. So I would say probably Kaiser, and the one I would probably shy away from is Pat Mahomes, just because you don't know what you're going to get with him, and it might be more than a one-year project, and Alex Smith's on a one-year contract, I believe.
Well,
so.
He still has one year left on his deal, so...
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see, what they do there. And the NFL draft is coming up just a couple of weeks away or 6 weeks away or so. I believe it's April 28th, I believe. I will look that up real quick. It's one of my favorite events in all of the sport because it's
the first day is really cool, but beyond that, I'll still watch. But it's lost all the flair once you get past day one, kind of, because, they bring the guys up on stage, give them a jersey, give them a hat, and I think that's cool. But, day two is just okay, let's just please hurry up. I just want to see who's going to be joining.
I like day two, and day three I kind of tune in and out of, but I'm not a gigantic fan of it because it just drags on. And most of the time the fifth round quarterback, unless you're Dak Prescott, I know he's a fourth rounder, but the second day quarterback probably isn't going to make the roster. So. Oh, well, it is what it is. I mean, it's always fun to watch, and that's April 27th. It's at the Philadelphia Museum of Art in Philadelphia, so make sure to check that out, and I'm sure we'll talk about that more in the upcoming future. Well, that'll do it for this segment. Sean, when we get back, it's tournament time. Are you ready?
I've been ready for this since November, so yeah, you can say I'm ready.
Think you can beat me in our pick six?
Maybe.
I guess we'll see. Keep it tuned. You're listening to a podcast to be named later with Trevor and Sean. Welcome back to a podcast to be named later, Trevor Mater, Sean. Sean, now it's time for one of my favorite things, and I'm sure it's one of yours too. It's March, so that means madness. But before you can get to the madness, the NCAA tournament, you have to get through conference tournaments first.
Yeah, this is kind of the madness before the big tournament. I mean, honestly, there are two huge upsets that happened the first weekend of March Madness, and then it's pretty much chalk after that, So this is when you can have teams come out of nowhere trying to fight for their life to try and get in the tournament. And, a team could steal a conference spot just by, just for instance, let's say Clemson were to win the ACC tournament. That would definitely steal a spot from someone else that's just sitting on the bubble.
There were 4 conference tournaments that have already been completed, and 4 schools have punched their ticket to the big dance. Florida Gulf Coast won the Atlantic Sun. That'd be a team I would watch out for. I watched a little bit of their game yesterday. They could really be a scary 14 or 15 seed, and they've shown in the past that they can do that. Winthrop is the Big South champion. Wichita State, no surprise, they win the Missouri Valley Conference. And your Ohio Valley Conference champion, the Gamecocks of Jacksonville State, first time in school history that they will be dancing in March. They kind of had an upset. They were the 4 seed going into that tournament, 20-14 overall. So you got to assume they're probably going to be a 16 seed or a 15 seed. They beat UT Martin by 11, and they had to beat the 1 seed and the 2 seed to win the championship. So congrats to them, and we'll see them in March at some point. But Sean, you look ahead to the Big Six. We set off the year. We're going to pick these. If you have a chance to look at the ACC, and if so, just give me what do you see?
This conference is absolutely stacked, and the fact that someone's going to win this tournament is absolutely say it's someone from day one is going to make some sort of run, and it's kind of been the thing that's happened in the ACC tournaments of years past. But I mean, you're going to have to run the gauntlet if you want to win this.
Yeah, this conference, looking at it, probably has, I would say, definitely 9 teams that make it in, and if Wake Forest can get on a run and win a couple games, maybe 10. I mean, out of their 15 teams, that is insane. So, yeah, I mean, it's crazy. Quick look at the seeding. North Carolina is the 1 seed, Florida State the 2, Notre Dame the 3, Louisville the 4, Duke the 5, Virginia the 6, Virginia Tech the 7, Syracuse the 8, Miami the 9, Wake Forest 10th, Georgia Tech 11th, Clemson 12th, North Carolina State 13th, Pittsburgh 14th, and Boston College is 15th. Kind of a weird tournament format, having 15 teams when you add in Notre Dame for the basketball part of it. Normally it's a 14-team conference, but so they have kind of a weird tournament. So the top 4 seeds actually get a double bye. So I mean that might help them out too, being a little more rested. Duke is the 5 seed. they will get either Clemson or NC State. And you look at that tournament, Sean, Syracuse, Miami, that's a pretty good 8-9 matchup for, that's a semifinal in most other conferences.
Yeah, I mean, it just, being the 8-9 isn't really a thing to, look down at because coming into even the ACC play, Syracuse was awful.
Yeah.
They weren't looking like a tournament teams people were seeing if Jim Boeheim was going to retire after this year. And, he turned it around, and now they're the 8th seed. So congratulations. If you beat the Hurricanes, you can go and play North Carolina.
Who do you like in that matchup, Syracuse or Miami?
I like Miami a little bit more just because, they have that experience. Well, I was going to say coaching experience, but they both have the coaching.
Yeah.
I would give Syracuse the coaching advantage. But I don't know. I think I'm going to go Miami. I think they're just playing a little bit better. And, it's really hard to pick either of these teams because, honestly, they're going to go up against North Carolina. And I think North Carolina is going to go in there and just absolutely dominate both of them.
Yeah, that'll be a good matchup. And then you look, the 4-5 matchup, I'm assuming Duke will probably beat Clemson or NC State. Probably.
Maybe.
It's tough to say with Duke. Then you get the Louisville-Duke semifinal or quarterfinal. Florida State, the 2 seed, good year from them. And then we could see a Notre Dame-Virginia quarterfinal. That
Virginia being a 6 seed is kind of scary for everyone else because they are great defensively, but offensively they really didn't have it in click pretty much until the last 5 games of the season where they were actually able to score. And because their defense is so good, they don't have to score a lot to beat teams, but, they've been scoring in the 60s and 70s.
When you look at the ACC tournament, who do you see in the finals? What would you think is going to be the finals?
Well, it's hard because normally it'd be North Carolina, Duke, but because Duke had a really bad season, they're probably going to meet in the semifinals.
Yes.
They could. Louisville's playing really well. I don't think, I think they're good. They're just not the normal Louisville good.
Didn't they? They played North Carolina a couple weeks. Was it last week or 2 weeks ago? They played North Carolina. I'm pretty sure they lost.
Yeah, these teams play so often that it's really hard to keep track of when they play and who they play. The one game that sticks out in my mind was North Carolina Duke over the past weekend, and that's the best rivalry you can get in college basketball, so that's why it sticks out. But other than that, they're going to get, as you said, around 9 to 10 teams, and if one of these teams possibly slips through, they could steal a spot even from Wake Forest, who could get in if they win 2 games. They could beat Boston College and go and beat Virginia Tech, and if they play well against Florida State, they could possibly get a spot, or maybe they even can continue on and go out and steal a spot from someone.
Yeah, it's tough. I'm gonna take North Carolina and Notre Dame in the finals. I think North Carolina is the most talented team in the ACC right now, and I'm not so sure that if the tournament started, that wouldn't be my pick to win it all. The way they're playing, they're just so fluid. Notre Dame always seems to find a way to get to the ACC finals. They've kind of been streakish this year. They'll have skids where they look really well, and then they'll kind of slide a little bit. They would get Florida State in a semifinal match, and I think they split earlier this year. So I would take North Carolina over Notre Dame. What do you think? Is North Carolina your go-to?
Yeah, I'm going to pick North Carolina, and then I think I'm going to pick Virginia to slide their way into the finals. I think they're playing really good right now, which is really good for just the entire month of March in general. But I think the defense is playing well enough to carry them always. And then I think they can score enough points to get past teams. So I think I'm going to go North Carolina, Virginia in the finals.
Okay, now we'll move on to the Big East. That tournament is in Madison Square Garden in New York City. There are 10 teams in Big East Conference, and the number 1 seed is your defending national champions, Villanova. Butler is the 2. Providence is the 3. Marquette the 4. Seton Hall the 5. Creighton drops all the way down to the 6 seed. Xavier's the 7. St. John's the 8. Georgetown the 9. And DePaul the 10. So a 10-team tournament format. It starts off with St. John's, Georgetown, and Xavier DePaul. Those will set up the matchups for Villanova and Butler. And the other matchups for the quarterfinals is Marquette, Seton Hall. That's a good semifinal 4-5 matchup. And Providence, Creighton. What do you see out of the Big East?
There were a lot of good teams, But I don't know how many teams are actually going to end up getting into the tournament because Marquette's probably in. I think Seton Hall probably has to win out to get in. But Creighton being a 6 surprises me just because they were so high up early on, but because they've just lost, they've been going down in the rankings.
I think the Big East could probably have 7 teams in, honestly. I mean, you look at their record. Xavier's 9-9 and 19-12. They were, when Edmund Summer went down with the torn ACL, they were hurt by that. But I still think, this bracket's a soft bubble this year. So, I mean, they could probably get in. Seton Hall probably want to win a game for reassurance, and Providence 20-11, Marquette 19-11. I mean, there's some good basketball in the Big East for sure.
Yeah, it's really hard to say that 7 teams are going to get in because with injuries coming in to the Big East Conference just in general, they had a lot of their top flight guys go down, so that kind of diminishes the way they the way they play and how they're going to be looked at by the people who seed them. Because Creighton, they were 3rd place in the Big East just not very, very long ago. So who knows? Maybe they get 6, maybe they get 7. But I mean, this is what the tournament is for.
Yeah, when you look at this bracket, Sean, in the Big East, last year Villanova was the 1 seed going in. They were probably going to be a number 1 seed in the tournament in March Madness had they not lost to Seton Hall in the finals. What do you see from this tournament as far as what you think the finals is going to look like?
I think Villanova is going to go to the finals from one half of the bracket. I don't think Marquette or Seton Hall is going to be able to beat them. I think they're playing really well right now. But then once you look at the other side of the bracket, it gets really hard because Butler's not playing great, even though last week they came off of wins against Villanova and I think Xavier. And seeing Xavier again as the 7 seed is really weird because they were, one of the top 25 teams, while when you look at Marquette, Seton Hall, Providence, they weren't actually ranked in the top 25. And so maybe that's just me looking at the top 25 too much. I mean, these guys aren't here, well, then they're not worthy type of thing. But on that side, I think I'm going to go with Butler, but they haven't been playing well, so I'm going to need to see them play in the quarterfinal game really before I can say yes, they're going to get in.
So you're going Villanova over Butler, am I right? And I'm going to go a little bit different. I think Villanova is just a little bit too challenging for us, but I'm going to take Providence. The Friars have been playing really well. They're led by Rodney Bullock with 16 points a game. They also have a couple other guys in double digits. They've won a handful of games in a row. They beat Butler. They beat Creighton. They beat Xavier. They're playing really, really well here down the stretch. As I pull it up here, they have won 6 in a row going into the tournament. Wins over Butler by 6, Xavier by 12, at Creighton by 2, over Marquette by 4, and then bottom dwellers DePaul and St. John. Providence is another team that's always kind of scary getting into the tournament. They did lose to Villanova earlier on the year by 10. They kind of hit a skid early in the season. They lost to Boston College. They lost to Xavier. They lost to Butler. They lost to Creighton. They lost to DePaul by 1. They lost to St. John's by 5. But they've kind of gotten everything figured out, and they're playing really, really well. And they have a guard in Kyron Cartwright that's really good at distributing the ball around. Averages 6.8 assists per game. So he's playing well, and I just think the Friars are clicking at the right time. So I'm going to give me Villanova Providence in the finals.
Yeah, that's not too hard to see, the Big East. They're going to get team, as you said, about 6 to 7 teams in the tournament, and maybe if Xavier makes a deep run that they can, fully get in the tournament, and maybe even St. John's, Georgetown. I mean, I don't think they could, but, this is what March is all about.
Now, Sean, your favorite conference in all of college basketball, unless it's like the MAC or something. Big 12. Well, I mean, what do you see from the Big 12?
This is pretty much a 5-team race. The number 1 seed, Kansas, 2 seed, West Virginia, 3 seed, Baylor, 4 is Iowa State, 5 is Oklahoma State, 6 Kansas State, 7 Texas Tech, 8 TCU, 9 Oklahoma, and 10 Texas. I think pretty much anyone except Kansas State in the top 6 can win right now.
How many tournament teams do you think the Big 12 has? 6, 7? I mean, I think 5 for sure. I think Kansas, West Virginia, Baylor, Iowa State, and Oklahoma State are probably locks. Texas Tech, I don't know. 6-12 in the Big 12 isn't that sexy. I mean, Kansas State has a better record in the Big 12 and overall record they seem to maybe be a little more on the bubble than Texas Tech.
Yeah, I think if Kansas State can go out and beat Baylor in the second round, then they'll be able to get into the tournament, and that'll be the end of that because they've already beaten Baylor down in Waco. So I think that'll really play into their
Look at
hands.
the quarterfinal matchups. Kansas will get either TCU or Oklahoma in the quarterfinals. Then assuming they win, they'll get either Iowa State or Oklahoma State in the semifinals. Which one of those teams scares you the most, seeing them in the semifinals?
More Iowa State because Kansas played Oklahoma State over the weekend and they beat them by 5. It's not, I'm not afraid of playing Oklahoma State because we went down into their home and beat them. Iowa State, they don't quit shooting.
Yeah,
So
and Kansas City is like Hilton South.
I've been told that from many people around here. And, Iowa State, they don't really have to play for anything at this point. Kansas State's truly the only team right now that is playing for their tournament life. But, getting to say that you're the Big 12 tournament champion means something.
When you look at this tournament, what do you think the final looks like?
Well, I really hope that it's like Kansas-Baylor, because I think Kansas matches up much better against Baylor than they do against West Virginia, and I really don't like seeing the press.
So Kansas-Baylor, Kansas-West Virginia.
This was a little bit hard.
Yeah.
I think West Virginia's very good, and I think they're better than Baylor as a team, but for whatever reason, Baylor seems to match up well against West Virginia. So I'm going to go with West Virginia winning, and then I think Kansas wins out in Kansas City.
See, I'm the same but different. I think West Virginia beats Baylor. I think that press is just too much. I think West Virginia wins the Big 12. I mean, what is Kansas really playing for right now? I'm not. Even if they lose, I think they're probably still a 1 seed.
Yeah, they just need to get the 1 seed in the Midwest so they can go back to Kansas City.
Yeah, but as long as a team from the Midwest or this pod isn't also the 1 seed, if the 1 seeds stay the way they are, Kansas is going to be in Kansas City. There's no doubt about it. I mean, so, yeah, I think West Virginia, the press is going to be maybe a little bit too much for him. And West Virginia had them on the ropes a couple weeks ago. They were up by, 14 with about 2.5 minutes to go, and they somehow found a way to blow that lead away.
Yeah, it's not really the press that gets to Kansas when they play West Virginia. Like they still commit turnovers, but it's more just like the half-court defense that gets to Kansas. They don't have a good flow on offense. And, the press really hasn't gotten to Kansas this year when they've played West Virginia.
Yeah, so, I mean, it'll be interesting to see in that one how it turns out. Now, Sean, my favorite conference in all of basketball, or one of them, and it's a very wide-open one, the Big Ten. This is the least predictable of any of these conferences. A 14-team conference. All schools make the tournament. Purdue's the 1 seed, Wisconsin the 2, Maryland the 3, Minnesota the 4, Michigan State's the 5, Northwestern is the 6, Iowa 7, Michigan 8, Illinois 9, Indiana 10, Ohio State 11, Nebraska 12, Penn State 13, and Rutgers 14th. The top seeds in the tournament have a double bye, so that'll be interesting for that. You look at this conference, tournament team-wise, I'd say Purdue's a lock, Wisconsin's a lock, Maryland's a lock, Minnesota's a lock, Northwestern's a lock. Michigan probably, I would say, is probably in there at 20-11 and 10-8 in the Big Ten. Then you have a couple teams that, I don't know. I think Michigan State will probably get in just because they're Michigan State. Iowa, maybe, if they can win a game or two and get some help. Illinois, I believe they just lost to Rutgers yesterday or the other day. So they shouldn't even be able to be in the tournament if they win the Big Ten, because that is a pathetic loss, and I look it up, and they did. They lost to Rutgers by 3 at Rutgers, so yikes. But they have beat Iowa, Northwestern, and Michigan State in the last couple weeks, so who knows there. But, Sean, when you look at the Big Ten tournament, what do you see?
So the Big Ten is not my favorite conference to watch or to talk about, just because some of the teams I think are overrated a bit. Iowa, they're playing good of late. If you had told, or if I had told you at the beginning of the year that Iowa would be in the tournament, you'd be like, no, Sean, what are you smoking? There's no way they're going to be able to get in the way they're playing. Well, it turns out when you beat Wisconsin, Purdue, Maryland, you can, get away with only playing half a season, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. To me right now, there's a couple teams I would not want to see in the Big Ten tournament. I don't want to see Minnesota. That team is playing really, really well. They are 23-8 on the season, 11-7 in Big Ten conference play. They have rallied off. They just lost to Wisconsin yesterday, but prior to that, they had rallied off 8 in a row with wins over Illinois, Iowa, Rutgers, Indiana, Michigan, Maryland, Penn State, Nebraska. They did lose by 17 to Wisconsin in Madison. But and that'll be their semifinal matchup or quarterfinal matchup, assuming they make it. They're playing really well. Northwestern's such a wild card because at times this year they've played really well. They've kind of skidded a little bit lately. You never know with Michigan State. Tom Izzo obviously is going to have his team really well coached, but the team that I really wouldn't want to face, and this makes me kind of excited to say it right now, is the Iowa Hawkeyes. There was a point this season where, like you said, there was no way they were making the tournament. You lose to Nebraska, Omaha, in Iowa City. That's just devastating. And then the way they've rallied back, they started off the year 3-5. So since then they're 15-8. That's serviceable. They do have wins over Wisconsin, wins over Maryland, a win over Purdue. They do play a tough non-con schedule too. They lost to Seton Hall by 8. They did get blown out by Virginia. They lost to Notre Dame by 14. The one that is going to sting them is losing to UNO by 9. Like I said, back on December 3rd. They did beat Iowa State. So they've been playing really, really good as of late. They won a 4-game winning streak. Their last loss on February 18th to Illinois. I caught most of the Wisconsin game the other night. I didn't catch the end of it, much to my dismay. Peter Jock, the kid, when he's on, he's on. He's probably the best point guard in the Big Ten when he's on. Jordan Bohannon is shooting out of his mind for a freshman. Nick Baer, being from Iowa, it's a guy that everybody loves. You love the story behind Nick Baer. It's a good team. I think they probably need to get to at least the semifinals to lock themselves in. They need to win 2 games. Put them at 20-13. Probably a 10 or 11 seed then. You made the tournament. That's a lot better than I think a lot of people thought they would be.
Yeah, and all they have to do is beat a very struggling Indiana and a Maryland team that they've already beat. It's not teams that you haven't beat. It's not like you have to go out and beat Minnesota, who they lost to, I believe, in double overtime.
Yes, they lost 101-89 in double overtime.
Yeah, and so, they would have to meet them in the semifinals, but at that point, as you talked about, I think they're in if they win 2 of those games. But, just overall in general, it's really hard to pick teams to come out of the Big Ten because everyone's beaten up on each other, and it's not because everyone's that good. Teams have just struggled against teams that they, should have beaten.
Yeah, I think it's balanced, but
it's not it's not as good as it has been in the past for the Big Ten.
And Iowa would get Wisconsin in the quarterfinals, and they would get Maryland in the semifinals.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Looking ahead to that, Sean. What do you see and what do you like in the finals?
I like Purdue to kind of. I think they're going to go to the finals just because Caleb Swanigan's going to lead them.
And Isaac Haas, Ian Haas, I don't remember his name. When they're on the court together, they both play really well.
And so I think Purdue, they've kind of hit some bumps in the road, but I think they're still a good enough team that they'll be able to make it to the finals because I think Wisconsin's a bit wishy-washy. They're not fantastic. There was a few weeks ago where Purdue, Wisconsin, and Maryland were all tied for the top seed in the Big Ten, and now Wisconsin's the 4 seed. So clearly they didn't end the season very well with
Wisconsin's
Minnesota.
the 2 seed. Is what I have this as. Wisconsin's the 2, Maryland the 3, Minnesota the 4, according to Wikipedia. And Wikipedia has never been wrong.
We have a bit of a problem, but that's fine.
Yeah. So who do you like in the finals? Assuming.
Well, okay. I guess we're just
assuming my bracket is right.
Goodness, ESPN and Wikipedia being off. Man, this throws a wrench in our plan, doesn't it, Trevor?
No, it does.
I'm going to pick 4 teams because that way from either
here we
side
go.
of
The
bracket,
official Big Ten men's tournament bracket. I have it right here.
I need you to fill me in on this, Trevor.
Okay. Well, it's just kind of a press release on stuff. It's not even actually the bracket. That's okay. Here we go. We got it. Wisconsin's a 2 seed. I was right.
ESPN has let me down once again. Oh, goodness. Everything I've said is wrong. Okay. Well, if Wisconsin's the 2 seed, that kind of changes. Is Maryland the 3 seed?
Maryland is the 3, Minnesota's the 4.
Oh, goodness. This, switches everything. How do you get this wrong, ESPN? That's, I guess, a story for another day.
They probably thought that La La Land won an Academy Award, too, I'm sure.
Man, they should just write Moonlight on top of this bracket. Oh, my goodness. Okay, so I think Purdue's going to be able to make it out just because, as you said, they're playing Minnesota. I could see Minnesota coming out with the upset, but Maryland and Wisconsin don't really wow me right now. They're both not playing great, so I think, you know what, I'm gonna take that Iowa team. And I think they're gonna make it to the finals.
That's wow. I thought I was being bold going with the upset. That's exactly what I had too. And Iowa's not. I don't think they've won a conference tournament game under Fran McCaffrey. So it might not be a good pick. I know the last couple years they've been upset. I think last year Penn State beat them in the first round, and that was kind of disappointing. But I'm going to take Purdue over Iowa as well. I think that would get the Hawks into the tournament. And, Purdue, they're in no matter what. But go Hawks. On to the Pac-12, Sean, real quick here. Quick rundown, 12 teams in Pac-12. Oregon, the 1 seed. Arizona, the 2. UCLA, the 3. Utah, 4. Cal, 5. USC, 6. Colorado, 7. Arizona State, 8. Stanford, 9. Washington State, 10. Washington 11th, and Oregon State with a conference record of 1-17. Who was the poor guy that lost to Oregon State? They were 1-17, 5-26 on the season. Their lone win in conference play came against Utah by 1 in Gill Coliseum in Corvallis with a attendance of 5,000.
Yeah, it's not much more than we can get here in Bearcat Arena.
Yeah, and we're not a Division I team. When you look at the Pac-12, what do you see? Who do you like?
I think this is a 3-team race, and that's it. I think it's going to come down to Oregon, UCLA, and Arizona. Basically, who's better that day. These 3 teams could pretty much each play a best-of-7 series, and I think it would be 4-3 each time. I think that's how close all of these teams are. And, the rest of the teams, Utah being the 4, they don't impress me. Cal doesn't impress me. USC, I think, could possibly make some... they'll be able to beat Washington, and they could give UCLA an upset threat. But other than that, I don't see the Pac-12 being able to do much more than that.
No, I don't either. I think it's a 3-horse race as well, and it's interesting. Going ahead and looking at the finals, who do you like in the finals?
I like Oregon coming out of the top half of the bracket, and then it gets really hard when you get to the semifinal between UCLA and Arizona because UCLA and Arizona played
twice, and they split.
Yeah, and they split. And
I think the first time Arizona won by 24, and then the second time UCLA won by 5 or 4. I mean, it's close.
I think I'm going to go with Arizona. I think they learned from their loss against UCLA. I still think UCLA is a very good team, and I think Oregon versus Arizona, and I think Arizona comes out on top.
I'm going to go UCLA over Oregon. UCLA is playing really well right now. They've won 9 in a row. Their defense is playing a little better. They've held their opponents under 80 points the last 10 games. So they're playing a lot better in that. They did lose to USC earlier on in the year, so it's interesting to see what will happen there if those two meet, as USC is the 6th seed, so they should beat Washington. I think Lonzo Ball is the type of kid, kind of like an Anthony Davis that can just take over a tournament if he needs to. So I'm going to take UCLA over Oregon. I like Oregon. I don't know that they can get it done outside of Dylan Brooks. So I'm going to take the Bruins over the Ducks. Sean has the Wildcats of Arizona over Oregon. And we just got one more conference left to pick, Sean.
We barely have to pick this conference.
It's the best conference in football, but it's probably the worst in basketball, the SEC tournament.
This is a 2-team race. The final will be okay. I can't say will because then it'll come back to bite me. The finals should be Kentucky, Florida, but Vanderbilt just beat Florida, and they have a season sweep over Florida in the regular season, and they could meet in the quarterfinals. So What do I know? I think it should be Kentucky, Florida. I don't think anybody's going to be able to challenge Kentucky. Missouri gets to play another game. They don't have a coach anymore, but...
Yeah, I wonder who's going to coach that. I think
probably an assistant.
I think we know a guy that would have no problem coaching at Mizzou. I mean, I'm not going to say names, but Devin Albertson would be interested if they came calling. Quick look at the seeds in the SEC. Kentucky's the 1, Florida's the 2, Arkansas the 3, South Carolina the 4, Alabama the 5, Ole Miss 6, Vanderbilt 7, Georgia 8, Tennessee 9, Texas A&M 10, Auburn 11, Mississippi State 12, LSU 13, and Mizzou is 14. This is a team conference that has maybe 4 tournament teams, maybe. With
I think if South Carolina wins the tournament, they get in. But other than that,
you think even at 22-9, that they don't get in?
The SEC's really bad.
It is really bad. And then it falls on your non-con schedule, and I couldn't tell you anything about either one of these schools' non-conference schedules. Looking it up right now, they did beat Michigan and Syracuse.
Michigan, okay. Both of those teams were also playing very bad at the beginning of the year, so you have to kind of take that with a grain of salt.
And you look at Arkansas, their non-con, that was pretty garbage. Their only actual tough game was Minnesota, and they lost. They did lose to Florida and Kentucky. They lost to Missouri. I mean, that's a bad loss.
If you lose to Missouri, you should automatically be taken out of postseason consideration.
Yeah, they lost to Florida by 13 here last week. I'm going to say I just think Kentucky's too darn talented. I think when Kentucky's on, they can beat any team in the nation. I mean, and why not be motivated now when you're getting into when it matters? I mean, it's tournament time. I think we could see that team do what a Calipari team normally does and just flip on a switch, and that team as a 2 seed or a 3 seed could be dangerous in the tournament. So I'm going to take Kentucky. If South Carolina was the 3 and Arkansas was the 4, I would probably take South Carolina over Florida to get to the finals. But I can't pull the trigger on Arkansas. So I'm gonna go chalk here. I'm gonna take Kentucky over Florida. Are you thinking the same way, or what's going on in that head up there?
Okay, I'm gonna pick Kentucky at the top half of the bracket, and I'm gonna kind of switch it up. And I think Arkansas makes it to the championship, not because they beat Florida, but I think Vanderbilt goes and beats Florida. If they lose to Arkansas, it's not really hard. I mean, Vanderbilt swept Florida this year, so there's no reason to not think they can't do it again.
Hot take.
Yeah, I guess so. Oh,
yeah.
Well, it'll probably be a cold take here in a few days anyway.
Just a quick rundown of our tournament predictions. ACC tournament, I have North Carolina over Notre Dame. Sean has North Carolina over Virginia. Big East, I have Villanova over Providence. Sean has Villanova over Butler. Big 12, I have West Virginia over Kansas. Sean flips it. He's got Kansas over West Virginia. Big 10, I have Purdue over Iowa, and so does Sean. Brilliant minds think alike there. Pac-12, I have UCLA over Oregon. Sean has Arizona over Oregon. And in the SEC, I have Kentucky over Florida. And Sean has Kentucky over Arkansas. What do you say? 2 points for getting the champion right and 1 point for getting the runner-up right?
I guess so. I mean, we haven't even gotten to the truly fun part. I guess next Monday's show is going to be really fun because Selection Sunday.
It's just going to be total bracket. I'm sorry, Northwest basketball, but it's just going to be
if they're in the championship game, honestly, we can talk about
bracketology is what it's going to be, and I'm stoked.
They're going to be in a bracket of a kind.
They are. We could talk about that one a little bit. Division 2 bracketology just isn't quite the same, but yeah, so make sure you check out the one next week. That is going to be full-on bracketology. We're going to make pick by pick. Okay, I don't know. We'll see, but it should be a fun show next week. Went a little longer than we maybe would have liked to, but thank you to everyone for listening, and we'll be back here next week to break down some basketball, Sean.
Yes, we will.
I can't wait. That'll do it for our podcast to be named later. For Sean Eno, I'm Trevor Mader. Come back next week.